The beeping of the heart monitor was a slow, mournful dirge. Each weak blip felt like a countdown to the end. I turned my head on the pillow, the movement costing me more energy than I seemed to have left. Beside me, in the matching hospital bed, lay the man I had shared my life with for 5 decades. Arthur Blackwood. His face was a roadmap of wrinkles, his once vibrant green eyes now clouded with age and pain. He was looking at me, his breath a shallow rasp. I tried to smile, to offer some final comfort, but his voice, thin and trembling, cut through the sterile air. "Elara," he whispered. My name. A flicker of warmth, quickly extinguished by his next words. "There's a next life. I won't marry you." I felt my own heart stutter, a physical pain that had nothing to do with my failing body. The sheer, unvarnished contempt in his voice was a poison dart. "I'll choose Sophia," he continued, his gaze drifting to the ceiling, to some memory I wasn't a part of. Sophia Vance. Sophia. The name was a ghost that had haunted our entire marriage. His first love, the one who got away. The one he'd supposedly never gotten over, even as he built a life, a family, a fortune with me. Rage, hot and bitter, flooded my veins. It was the last emotion I ever felt. The heart monitor shrieked a final, frantic protest, and then there was nothing. Nothing and then everything. Harsh sunlight stabbed into my eyes. I jolted, disoriented. The smell of disinfectant was gone, replaced by the scent of cut grass and blooming jasmine. I was standing, my legs strong beneath me. Blinking, I took in my surroundings. I was on the university quad, under the old oak tree where... "Elara, are you deaf?" The voice. Young, sharp, dripping with disgust. I knew that voice. My head snapped up. There he was. Arthur Blackwood. But not the dying old man. This was the 23-year-old Arthur, dressed in a tailored suit for a presentation, his face a masterpiece of youthful arrogance. His green eyes, clear and bright, glared at me with an impatience I remembered all too well. A dizzying wave of understanding washed over me. The memories of a lifetime, the pleas, the tears, the slow erosion of my dignity, the final crushing betrayal, crashed into the consciousness of my 22-year-old self. I had been reborn. I was back on the very day he broke up with me. In my previous life, this was the moment my misery truly began. I had knelt. I had begged. I had cried until I hyperventilated and was rushed to the hospital. My very public display of despair had forced him to reluctantly take me back, a decision he would resent me for until his dying day. Now standing here, the phantom pain of his deathbed words was sharper than any memory. "I'll choose Sophia Vance." My heart ached, pricked by 1,000 needles. The love I had carried for him for a lifetime curdled in an instant, leaving behind a cold, clear clarity. "Elara, we're breaking up," Arthur said, his tone flat and final. "Whether you agree or not. I know you love me, but I have to take responsibility for Sophia." The script was the same. He was waiting for my performance of grief. He needed it, I realized now. He needed to see me shattered to validate his own sense of importance. A cold smile tugged at my lips. Breaking up? Fine by me. His expression froze. The carefully rehearsed speech died in his throat. His face flushed a dull red, the words stuck. He looked so ridiculous, so deflated that I almost laughed. This was the man I had wasted a lifetime on? Only when you stop loving someone can you finally see their true face. This wasn't a breakup born of necessity. It was a power play designed to make me suffer, to make me beg, to crush my dignity completely. "Well then," I said, my voice dripping with a sweetness I didn't feel. "I wish you two, a bitch and a dog, eternal happiness." I turned to walk away, my steps already feeling lighter. But his hand shot out, his fingers digging into my wrist like a vice. "Who are you calling that?" His face was dark, a storm cloud of fury. No one had ever spoken to him like that. He was Arthur Blackwood, the golden boy, and I was supposed to be his devoted shadow. I shook off his hand with a strength that surprised us both. "Didn't understand me? Let me make it clear." I rose on my tiptoes, bringing my lips close to his ear. I could feel him tense. "Sophia's the bitch. You're the dog. Perfect match." He raised his hand to slap me. The instinct of a spoiled man who'd never been denied. But I was faster. My life of quiet submission was over. The sound was sharp, crisp, satisfying. My palms stung from the impact. A collective gasp rippled from the classmates who had been pretending not to watch. That's for all your fake love over the years, I said, my voice steady. The left side of his face swelled red instantly. He touched it, his eyes wide with disbelief. Are you crazy? I took 2 deliberate steps back, a brilliant, unburdened smile spreading across my face. No. I just don't like filthy dogs anymore. He stood rooted to the spot, staring at me as if I were a stranger. And I was. The Alara who would wait 3 hours in the rain for him was gone, replaced by a woman who had seen the bitter end of that particular story. Seeing the crowd gathering, he slipped back into his default persona, the cold, stoic victim. I never thought you'd turn into such an unreasonable shrew, he declared, his voice carrying for effect. Jealousy has made you unrecognizable. But I won't change my mind. The whispers began. I could feel their pitying, curious eyes on me. Enough, I said, waving a dismissive hand. Stop embarrassing yourself here. Don't worry. From this day forward, if I, Ilara Vance, so much as look at you again, may lightning strike me dead. I turned and walked away. My steps were so light they almost floated. This was what it felt like to let go. It wasn't a defeat, it was a liberation. I pulled out my phone, a clunky old thing that felt alien in my hand, and texted my dad. Dad, about the Blackwood family project. Don't trouble yourself. We're not investing. Back in the dorm, I was buzzing with a strange, euphoric energy. I stood in front of the mirror looking at my reflection. My 22-year-old self stared back, cheeks full of collagen, eyes bright and clear, unclouded by decades of disappointment. Idiot, I told my reflection. Is any man worth living or dying for? Of course not. My phone rang. It was my dad. Alara, what's going on? Yesterday you begged me to help Arthur. I took a deep breath. I analyzed the project, Dad. The risk is too high. Let's not take that gamble. He paused. A friend? I thought you two were dating. No, I said, my voice clear and light. Just friends. And now not even that. I added for good measure, yesterday he even stayed at a hotel with another woman. A longer silence. Then cautiously, Sweetie, are you okay? I'm fine, Dad, I said, and for the first time I meant it. He's not worthy of me. I could almost hear his sigh of relief through the phone. That's my girl. If anything happens, just tell me. After hanging up, a sudden sharp grief for my parents overwhelmed me. In my past life I had owed them far too much. They had poured all their resources into the Blackwood family's risky ventures, all because Mr. Blackwood had said, "Your daughter is head over heels for my son. They'll be family sooner or later." Our company was eventually swallowed by theirs. My parents were forced into early retirement, and my dad, ever the stoic, had comforted me. We're getting older. Isn't it better to rest? Let Arthur handle things now. And I, the lovesick fool, had believed him. In this life I would never make that mistake again. For the sake of my health, for the sake of loving myself and my family, I would stay far away from men like Arthur Blackwood. Life was too short. While I was still young, I would go all in. I spotted a poster on my wall. The deadline for the campus entrepreneurship competition was in 3 days. In my past life I had been too devastated to join. Arthur's team had won second prize, his first pot of gold in business. It was time to get my own. The next day I went to the cafeteria for lunch, my purpose renewed. I saw the entrepreneurship competition poster again, this time stopping to read the details. It was a university-wide event with serious venture capital attention for the winners. Interested in this? A clear, pleasant male voice asked from behind me. I turned. A young man stood there, a backpack slung over one shoulder. He was tall and lanky, dressed in a simple white shirt and jeans, with a pair of black-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. Behind the lenses, his eyes were a warm, intelligent brown, and they seemed to be smiling. I knew him. Leo Thorne. In my past life, Leo had become a rising star in the tech world. The company he founded went public 5 years later with a market value in the billions. We had moved in different circles then. I was the dutiful wife of Arthur Blackwood, and he was the brilliant, reclusive genius. I might be, I said, crossing my arms. Tell me about your project. His eyes lit up with an enthusiasm that was utterly disarming. He swung his backpack around and pulled out a laptop, opening it right there in the cafeteria. It's an AI-based medical imaging diagnostic support system, he began, his voice gaining speed and passion. In simple terms, it uses deep learning algorithms to help radiologists detect early-stage cancers more accurately and efficiently. My heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was exactly the kind of technology that would become monumental 2 decades later. In my last life, when I was in my 50s, it was a system just like this one that had caught my breast cancer early and saved my life. Drawing on the 75 years of life and business experience from my previous life, I began to dissect his presentation. Your technical specs are impressive, Leo, but your commercialization path is weak. You're focusing on direct sales to hospitals, but the procurement cycles are too long. You need to partner with larger medical equipment manufacturers. And your pricing model, it's unsustainable for widespread adoption. The more I spoke, the wider his eyes grew behind his glasses. He looked from me to his screen and back again. How do you have such sharp business instincts so fast? He finally asked, his voice full of awe. I shrugged casually. Family business. I've been around it since I was little. It wasn't a complete lie. By the way, how did you think to approach me? He pushed his glasses up his nose, a faint, shy smile playing on his lips. I've been following your work in the finance club for a while. Your analysis of the tech sector last semester was prescient. Something in me stirred. In my past life, no one had ever followed my work. I had been Arthur's girlfriend, then his wife, then his widow. My identity had always been an appendage to his. I sat down and we talked for over an hour, diving into the details. When I finally returned to the dorm, buzzing with intellectual excitement, I was immediately surrounded by my roommates. Their faces were a mixture of concern and morbid curiosity. Alara. Oh my God, are you okay? We saw the forum. We can't believe Arthur did that. That bastard. Took me a moment to understand. The news of our breakup had spread. I opened the campus forum on my computer. The headline was brutal. Campus heartthrob Arthur Blackwood's new relationship revealed. A love made in heaven. Scrolling down, the comment section was a cesspool. Finally, he dumped Alara Vance. About time. She was never good enough for him. Word is, Alara clung to him and wouldn't let go. The new girl is Sophia Vance. She's the real deal, rich family, Cambridge grad. I narrowed my eyes. Sophia. In my past life, after her family's business collapsed, they had all moved abroad. She had enrolled in some no-name college, leaving Arthur without a word. He had moped for a year before turning to me. And I, in my foolishness, had believed his lies about me being his solace, his true love. But the moment Sophia returned, they had picked up right where they left off. I was about to close the page when a new post popped up, exposing Alara Vance's hidden scandals. I clicked in. It was pure, unadulterated fiction from top to bottom. It claimed I dated multiple men simultaneously, that I got into the university through family connections, and heavily insinuated that I had used underhanded means to pursue Arthur. The poster's ID was Whispering Breeze. My money was on Sophia. In my past life, this would have shattered me. I would have collapsed into a sobbing heap. But now I felt a cold, calm fury. I calmly took screenshots of everything, saving them as evidence, and sent them directly to my dad's company legal team. Then I registered a new forum account and left a single comment under the post. Spreading rumors that get over 500 shares can land you in prison. Evidence collected, OP. Expect your court summons. Such low-level tactics. How stupid must I have been in my previous life to give everything for a man who allowed this to happen? 3 days later, Leo and I walked into the competition venue. The air was thick with ambition and nervous energy. And of course, standing near the entrance was Arthur Blackwood with Sophia Vance on his arm. They were flanked by 2 of his sycophantic teammates, strutting like they owned the place. Sophia was dressed head to toe in designer brands, her chin tilted at a haughty angle, looking down on everyone she deemed beneath her. Isn't this Alara Vance? Arthur's voice cut through the chatter, deliberately loud. Found yourself a new boyfriend so soon? His gaze swept over Leo and he smirked with pure disdain. A computer science nerd? Alara, your taste has really taken a nosedive. Sophia covered her mouth with a delicate hand, letting out a tinkling, fake laugh. So this is your junior, Alara? Leo, your standards aren't great either. Figures. Nothing good ever comes out of a dog's mouth, I replied coolly. I let my gaze drop pointedly to Sophia's flat stomach. I heard Arthur's taking responsibility for you. Just not sure if the kid's actually his. Remember to get a paternity test when it's born." Arthur's face twisted in fury. "You're the one with no shame. And now you're slandering others." I reached into my bag and pulled out a stack of printed photos. "I'm giving you a friendly reminder. And you want to bite me? Good thing I've had my rabies shots." I turned my attention to Sophia. "And by the way, selling yourself isn't shameful. What's shameful is that you couldn't even get a good price." Sophia's face drained of all color. "This school isn't the place for the likes of you." I held up the photos. They were grainy but unmistakable. "These are screenshots from the hotel security cameras. Arthur, you and Sophia during the time we were dating. So tell me who's really the one without self-respect." I gave them a brilliant cold smile. "If you're mentally ill, don't bother coming to me. I'm not a vet." With that, I turned and walked with Leo toward the contestants' area, leaving the two of them pale and stammering as the crowd gawked. The competition itself was a blur of focused energy. Leo was a machine on the technical side, his explanations clear and passionate. I handled the business plan and the Q&A, pinpointing market pain points and mapping out a profit model with a precision that made the investors in the room lean forward in their seats. We advanced to the finals in first place. Arthur's project, a flashy but hollow social media app, failed to impress. It barely scraped into the last qualifying spot. He blocked me in the hallway after the results were announced, his voice a low, angry growl. "Don't get too happy too soon, Alara. The finals are the real battle." I was about to ignore him and walk away when his phone rang. He answered, and his expression darkened with every passing second. He hung up and stalked toward me, fury written all over his face. "This was you, wasn't it?" he snarled. I put on my most innocent look. "Did you mean the little stunt on the confession wall?" "The Vance family just pulled their investment," he hissed, his teeth practically grinding together. "Do you have any idea how much my family will lose? All this, just to get back at me because we broke up." So that was it. And it had taken days for his family to even tell him. I smiled lightly. "How can you call it pulling out when we never invested in the first place?" His face was a mask of panic and rage. "No. Without that money, the Blackwood Group can't survive. You just wait." With a stormy glare, he turned and left. I watched him go, feeling nothing but a serene detachment. Once life gets back on track, your heart opens up. And mine was just beginning. The high from our competition success was intoxicating. For the first time in either of my lives, I was building something for myself, something that was entirely mine. The buzz around campus was no longer just about the scandalous breakup. It was about the sharp, savage girl who had slapped Arthur Blackwood and then gone on to dominate the entrepreneurship competition with a tech prodigy. The campus forum was on fire again, but this time the narrative had shifted. Memes were popping up everywhere. A split-screen image of me, caught mid-rant during our confrontation, looking fierce and unapologetic, juxtaposed with a photo of Arthur leaving the competition, dejected and pale. The comments were a balm to my soul. "Alara Vance is savage and fabulous. I love her. Arthur looked so gentle. Who knew he'd be such a snake? That mistress looked so cheap trying to act high class. Unpopular opinion. Alara and Leo actually make a great couple, right? Is it just me?" Reading that last one, a strange warmth spread through my chest. In my past life, I had been so blinded by the polished image Arthur presented to the world. Even when he was clearly in the wrong, a single well-acted apology was enough to make me forgive him. Now, with the rosy filter of love completely gone, I could see the real Arthur Blackwood, petty, selfish, and entitled. And the sight made me sick. I had actually spent an entire lifetime with a man like that. Over the next week, Arthur began to appear in my line of sight with an unnerving frequency. In the library, he'd be at a table nearby, pretending to read. In the cafeteria, he'd accidentally pass by my usual spot. In the lecture hall, he'd take a seat a few rows behind me. He always wore the same expression, a pained, conflicted look, as if he had something profound to say but was holding himself back. I knew exactly what this performance was about. The Vance family pulling out of their precarious investment deal had dealt a serious, possibly fatal, blow to the Blackwood Group. His father had undoubtedly given him a direct order: win Alara back by any means necessary. But it was far, far too late. Who would pity a dog that had betrayed its master? The day of the finals arrived. Leo and I were a well-oiled machine. Our presentation was flawless, our demo worked perfectly, and my answers to the judges' questions were sharp, informed, and backed by a business acumen that seemed to far exceed my years. We took first place without any suspense, and were immediately swarmed by venture capitalists handing us business cards. Through a gap in the celebrating crowd I saw Arthur. His team hadn't even placed in the top 3. He was standing alone in a corner, his shoulders slumped, staring at us with an expression I had never seen on him before. A tangled, ugly mix of raw anger, bitter jealousy, and the first faint flicker of regret. "Great working with you," Leo said, his voice husky with excitement and relief. When the crowd began to disperse, he reached out his hand. "Honestly, Alara, you're the best business strategist I've ever met." I shook his hand, feeling the firm, warm grip. "This is just the beginning, Leo." I wasn't joking. I had decades of practical experience and foresight he couldn't possibly imagine. As we stepped out of the venue into the cool evening air, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but I knew it was Arthur. "Blair, we need to talk." I blocked the number without a second thought. We were nowhere near the end of this. The week after our championship win, Leo and I practically moved into the computer science lab. We were optimizing the AI system, refining the code, and preparing for our first official meeting with investors. At 3 a.m. on a Thursday, it was just the two of us left. A row of empty coffee cups lined the table like fallen soldiers. I watched his long, slender fingers fly across the keyboard, lines of code flowing across the screen, and I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known was possible. He suddenly turned to look at me, his eyes behind his glasses tired but bright with a fierce excitement. "You're really not sleepy?" "Not at all," I smiled. Back then, when I was rushing to finish a project, I stayed up for 3 days straight. It was the truth. In my past life, when I was helping Arthur build his business from the ground up, I often worked through the night while he was out at endless, networking events. Every time he stumbled home drunk and late, I would still force myself to clean him up and get him into bed before allowing myself to rest. "You're only a senior," Leo said curiously, pushing his glasses up. "Where'd you get all that project experience?" "Family business," I said lightly, steering the conversation back to a particularly tricky piece of code. "I've been around it since I was little." We were in the middle of a deep discussion about data compression when the lab door suddenly creaked open. Arthur stood in the doorway, holding 2 neatly packaged takeout boxes from an expensive-looking restaurant. He had clearly dressed up for this. His hair was perfectly styled, his jacket crisp. But the moment his eyes landed on Leo, his pleasant mask slipped and his expression darkened. "Alara." He quickly adjusted his face back into the gentle, concerned smile I knew so well from my previous life. It was the smile he used every time he wanted something from me. "I heard you were working late, so I brought you some food." The sight of that smile now only turned my stomach. "What do you want, Arthur?" He walked in and set the boxes on the table with a soft thud. "It's from that new Michelin-starred French place in the West End. I remember you like escargot." "Thanks, but no," I said, pushing the boxes away from me. "I don't like it anymore." His smile froze on his face. "Alara, do we really have to be like this? Even if we've broken up, we can still be friends, can't we?" "Friends?" I almost laughed. "Arthur, you suddenly showing up and playing nice? Is it because your dad's forcing you to win back the Vance family's investment?" His face changed instantly, confirming my suspicion. "How did you?" "Because it's obvious," I cut him off coldly. "You can't even act the part. My dad called today. He said your father personally went to my house, telling him we were just a young couple having a silly fight. Dad was worried, so he called to check on me. I told him very clearly that you and I have nothing to do with each other anymore." Arthur's mask finally shattered. He stepped forward and grabbed my wrist, his grip painfully tight. "Alara Vance, don't push it too far. Who do you think you are? I don't need you to get things done. Let her go." Leo was on his feet in an instant, his voice low but firm. "None of your business," Arthur snapped, glaring viciously at him. "This is between me and her." In a surprisingly swift motion, Leo pried Arthur's hand from my wrist. "Get out," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Or I'll call campus security right now." Arthur clutched his own wrist, his eyes blazing with a humiliated rage. But after a tense standoff, he snatched up the takeout boxes and slammed the door on his way out, the sound echoing in the silent lab. The next day at noon, Leo and I met with our first serious investor, Mr. Chin, at a quiet, upscale cafe. The meeting went unexpectedly well. Mr. Chin, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s, asked probing questions, but I had answers ready, drawing on my knowledge of future market trends. He was impressed, and by the end of the meeting he promised an angel investment of $5 million for a 20% equity stake in our newly christened company, Ether Tech. After we signed the preliminary letter of intent, he gave me a long, meaningful look before leaving. "Young lady," he said, "you're impressive. If the Blackwood family's young master ever realizes what he's missed out on, he'll regret it for the rest of his life." Once he was gone, Leo let out a huge sigh of relief, slumping back in his chair. "I was so nervous just now. I thought he might pull out because of all those rumors floating around." That afternoon, as if on cue, a new post appeared on the campus forum, pinned by the administration. The title was, "Official Statement and Legal Notice Regarding the Rumors About Student Alara Vance." My heart hammered against my ribs as I clicked on it. The post, published by the school's official account, contained a formal warning to the rumor spreaders and included a cease and desist letter from my father's lawyers. But the most explosive part was at the end, an audio file. With a trembling finger I pressed play. A recorded conversation, slightly muffled but unmistakable, filled my ears. "I need you to post it. Make it sound convincing. She needs to learn her place." It was Arthur's voice, cold and commanding. "Are you sure, man? This could get messy." Another male voice, hesitant. "Just do it. I'll make it worth your while. She's a jealous shrew who's trying to ruin my life. People need to know the truth." The internet, as expected, blew up. The comments came in a torrent. "So it's confirmed. Arthur Blackwood is that low. The official statement seals it. He actually orchestrated the whole smear campaign. Poor Alara, getting broken up with and then smeared by her ex. I knew Arthur seemed shady after that last incident." As I was scrolling through the vindicating comments, my phone rang. It was from another unfamiliar number. The moment I picked up, I heard Arthur's furious, ragged voice. "Alara Vance, you." I hung up immediately, blocked the number and deleted it. I let out a slow, steadying breath. The game was changing. Arthur was getting desperate. The day our business license for Ether Tech arrived, Leo was so excited he picked me up and spun me around in the middle of our tiny new office. "We really have our own company now," he exclaimed, setting me down gently. The light in his eyes shone like stars, and for a moment I just stared, captivated. Looking at his unbridled happiness, I couldn't help but marvel at the strange workings of fate. In my previous life I had been so obsessively focused on Arthur that I had never noticed the quiet, brilliant boy in my computer science elective. Even when he later became a tech titan, I hadn't given him more than a passing thought in the society pages. But now here I was with my own company, my own career, and a partner who looked at me not as an accessory but as an equal. That evening, as I was walking back to my apartment, I saw a familiar figure leaning against a lamppost near my building. Arthur. In the dim orange glow of the streetlight, his expression was unreadable, but the tension in his shoulders was palpable. "Alara," he said, stepping forward as I approached. "We really need to talk." I stepped to the side, intending to walk straight past him, but his voice followed me, low and edged with a suppressed, frantic anger. "Just because we broke up, you had to make your dad change your family's investment plans? You're trying to destroy my family." I stopped and turned to face him. "This is business, Arthur," I said, my voice flat. "But if you insist on making it personal, then fine. I just don't want my family's money filling your family's rotten, leaking hole." "Satisfied?" He stared straight at me, his eyes pleading in a way that felt utterly foreign on his face. "I know you still love me. I can feel it. As long as you convince your dad to invest again, I promise I won't cause any more trouble. We'll be happy. I'll always treat you well." The audacity was breathtaking. "Go be happy with your precious first love," I sneered. "You were so determined to take responsibility for her. What happened? Suddenly you're not responsible anymore? My eternal blessings to you both." Arthur's face turned a sickly pale. You weren't like this before." I didn't even bother wasting more words. Just then a familiar, modest sedan pulled up to the curb beside us. The window rolled down, revealing Leo's concerned face. "Get in," he said simply. Surprised, I opened the passenger door and slid in. "What are you doing here? Even when you're a workaholic, you should know when to take a break," he said, a small smile playing on his lips. He handed me a cup of my favorite drink, a warm, sweet chai latte. "I figured you might need this." I wrapped my hands around the warm cardboard cup, feeling a gentle, profound warmth spread through my chest, melting the last of the ice Arthur's presence had left behind. "Thank you," I whispered. As the car pulled away from the curb, leaving a stunned Arthur standing on the sidewalk, Leo suddenly asked, his eyes on the road, "Are you okay?" I turned to look at him, the street lights casting shifting shadows over his sharply defined profile. "I'm great, Leo," I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. "I've never been this clear-headed before. I do regret those years I wasted when my judgment was clouded and dark. And I feel so sorry for my parents for what I put them through. But at least I finally see who's worth giving my heart to and who isn't." The car slowed at a red light. Leo turned his head toward me, his eyes deep and bright behind his glasses, reflecting the city lights. "So," he asked, his voice barely a whisper, "which one am I?" My heart skipped a beat, a flutter of nervous anticipation. But before I could form an answer, his phone rang, shattering the intimate moment. He answered it, and his expression darkened instantly. "What? Say that again." His voice was sharp, all softness gone. "The company's server has been hacked. Someone's trying to steal our core algorithm." He spun the steering wheel hard, executing a sudden sharp U-turn that threw me against my seatbelt. "We need to get back to the office," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "Now." I gripped my cup of chai tighter, the warmth doing little to fight the sudden chill that had settled in my bones. A hacker attack. At this specific timing. It was too convenient, too targeted. Could it be Arthur? Cornered, desperate, and lashing out like a wounded, filthy dog? The battle, it seemed, was far from over. In fact, it had just escalated to a whole new front. The cyber attack on EtherTech servers lasted for 3 full, grueling days. Leo and I, along with our small but dedicated tech team, practically lived in the office, taking shifts monitoring the server screens. The assaults were fierce, sophisticated, and clearly well-planned. This wasn't just some script kiddie looking for fun. This was a professional job. The attacker wasn't just trying to steal our medical imaging algorithm. They were also trying to plant a polymorphic virus designed to corrupt the entire database irreparably. "Here it comes again," Leo muttered at 4 a.m. on the second day. He straightened up in his chair, the relentless blue glow from the bank of monitors reflecting off his glasses, making him look like some cybernetic warrior. "This time it's bouncing through a proxy server in Seoul. They're getting clever." I rubbed my sore shoulders, my mind, despite the fatigue, drifting straight to Arthur. This kind of underhanded corporate espionage was exactly his style. In my past life, his company had been accused multiple times of stealing competitors' trade secrets, though he'd always managed to wriggle out of any real consequences with a combination of charm, lies, and legal threats. Exhausted, I walked to the window, looking down at the city that was just beginning to stir. The lack of proper rest was taking its toll. A wave of dizziness hit me, my temples pounded, and the world tilted alarmingly. The next thing I knew, I was lying in a hospital bed, the familiar, hated smell of disinfectant filling my nostrils. For a terrifying second, I thought I was back in that room with the dying Arthur. But then Leo's face swam into view, lined with worry. "The doctor said it's just severe exhaustion and stress," he said softly, his hand gently adjusting my blanket. "Nothing serious. You just need to rest." He tried to smile. "The attacks have stopped for now. But before coming here, I set up some new, more aggressive traps in the system. If they start again, we'll be able to trace the source right to their doorstep." Reassured, the adrenaline finally ebbed and a heavy lethargy took over. Now that I was awake and stable, Leo finally couldn't hold out any longer. He slumped into the chair beside my bed, his head falling onto the sheets, and was asleep in seconds. Looking at his broad back, the way his shoulders rose and fell with each deep breath, a wave of overwhelming warmth and gratitude filled my chest. This was a feeling of being protected, of being cared for, that I had never once felt from Arthur in my entire previous life. It wasn't a show. It was quiet, steadfast, and real. After a few hours of rest, I felt strong enough to get up and find some proper food. That's when I saw him. Arthur, looking haggard and disheveled, was walking into the hospital. My curiosity piqued, I followed at a distance, staying out of sight. He entered a private room on the cardiology floor. Through the crack in the door, I heard a weak, rasping voice I recognized as his father's, Mr. Blackwood. "You must win the Vance girl back," the old man wheezed, his voice full of a desperate anger. "The company, it won't survive this quarter otherwise." "Dad," Arthur's voice was strained, frustrated. "Alara hates me to the bone now. It's impossible. I don't care how you do it." Mr. Blackwood erupted, followed by a fit of wet, hacking coughs. "Get on your knees if you have to. If you hadn't insisted on being with that Sophia Vance, the Vances never would have pulled their investment. She's nothing but trouble." "Dad, Sophia." "Shut up." Mr. Blackwood's voice dropped to a conspiratorial, venomous whisper, but I was close enough to catch the key part. "If you can't get Alara's forgiveness, then go see Mr. Giancarlo." A cold shiver of revulsion ran down my spine. Mr. Giancarlo. The name was infamous in certain circles. A notoriously ruthless business magnate rumored to have a particular appreciation for pretty-faced young men. I nearly gagged right there in the hallway. So, for the sake of their company, Arthur's own father was ready to pimp him out. I was about to lean in closer when the elevator at the end of the hallway dinged open. Sophia stepped out, clicking along the linoleum in ridiculously high heels. She was carrying shopping bags from several luxury bout irons, her face glowing from a fresh facial. She looked like she was on a spa day, not visiting a critically ill family friend. "Arthur," she called, her voice saccharine sweet. "Why didn't you answer my calls? I found this divine new bag at the boutique. You have to see it." "My dad's in the ICU, Sophia." Arthur's voice was ice cold. "Didn't I tell you to handle the press releases for me? And you're out buying a purse." "The doctor said he's not in any life-threatening danger," she pouted, her tone wounded. "And you promised me that bag last night. Why are you being so mean? It's not my fault your company is having problems." I saw Arthur's shoulders tense, but just as quickly they slumped in defeat. Seeing her pout and act pitiful, he backed down as he always did. "Fine. Just, not now, okay?" I didn't bother watching the rest of this pathetic farce. After grabbing a bland sandwich from the hospital cafeteria, I went back to the parking garage. Leo was already there, waiting by his car, his expression a mixture of relief and stern disapproval. "Alara, he began, but then he saw the look on my face. "What happened?" I shook my head, getting into the passenger seat. "Nothing. Just saw a couple of ghosts from my past." As he started the car, I added, "Leo, I'm starting to doubt my own choices." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What do you mean, Alara?" I took a deep breath. "Arthur. I saw him just now. His father is here. It's bad." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Lately he's been acting really suspicious. I found out Sophia had a boyfriend back in the UK, some guy named Mark. She drained his bank account before coming back here. And after she came back, she's been in constant secret contact with someone called Brother Kong." Leo glanced at me, a flicker of pain and confusion in his eyes. "Who's Brother Kong?" "I don't know for sure," I said, which was technically true in this timeline. "But it doesn't sound good. I think Arthur is finally starting to see her true colors and he's panicking." I almost laughed at the sheer, bitter irony of it. So this was his precious first love, the woman he had chosen over me on his deathbed. He was finally getting a taste of his own medicine. We drove in silence for a few minutes before he suddenly pulled over onto a quiet side street. He turned to me, his expression serious. "Alara, give me one more chance." I stared at him, stunned. "What?" "I know you still care about him. I see the way you look when his name comes up. But it's not too late for us. If you can just talk to your father, if the Vances would just reconsider investing. I promise I'll cut all ties with Sophia. We can be happy. I'll treat you the way you deserve to be treated." The performance was so transparent, so pathetic that I felt a fresh wave of disgust. "Arthur," I said, my voice like steel. "Are you here because you've finally seen Sophia's true, grifting face? Or is it because the Blackwood Group is about to go bankrupt?" He froze, his face alternating between red and white, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I knew I had hit the nail directly on the head. "Impossible," I said firmly, cutting off any further attempt at manipulation. "Some mistakes, Arthur, take a lifetime to repay." Without another glance, I got out of the car. Leo, who had been waiting patiently, got out as well, coming to stand by my side. Behind me, Arthur's voice carried a raw, desperate edge I had never heard from him before. "Alara, please." I didn't look back. I got into Leo's car and we drove away, leaving Arthur standing alone on the curb, his world crumbling around him. Up in my apartment, Leo handed me a freshly printed special issue of Business Weekly. "Your dad pulled some strings to get us this feature," he said, a proud smile on his face. The headline read, "Ether Tech, Post-90s Entrepreneurs Using AI to Transform Medical Imaging." The article was glowing, praising our innovation and our clear path to market. The moment this hit the shelves, Leo said, his eyes shining, our company phones started ringing off the hook. "We've had calls from 3 more major VC firms since this morning." That evening we sat in the office, the TV playing in the background. The financial news came on and the lead story made me pause. Blackwood Group's stock plummeted another 9% today, hitting a 5-year low, the anchor reported crisply. Sources say the company's flagship waterfront development project faces the risk of being abandoned due to a completely broken capital chain. "Want me to change the channel?" Leo asked softly, remote in hand. "No," I said evenly, my eyes fixed on the screen on the graph showing the Blackwood stock in a death spiral. "It's fine. The business world is like this. Winner takes all." Leo studied me thoughtfully for a long moment. "You've really let it go, haven't you?" he finally said, his voice full of wonder. I looked away from the TV, out the window into the ink-dark night. "Some people are only fit to live in memories, Leo," I whispered. "And some memories are best sealed away forever. Like those 50 years in my last life. Like that cruel final sentence he uttered before he died." Just then a call came in on the office landline. It was Sarah, our lead tech. Her voice was tight with panic. "Mr. Thorne. Miss Vance. The server's under attack again. This one's stronger than before. The firewall is about to collapse." Leo and I exchanged a single grim look and rushed to the server room. Inside, the small team was in a state of controlled chaos. On the main screen, the firewall's defense percentage was plummeting at an alarming rate. 87%, 63%, 41%. My palms were slick with sweat. This was it. They were going to break through. "Don't worry," Leo murmured, his voice eerily calm as he strode to the main control station. His fingers flew across the keyboard. "Activate the honeypot. And the tracer. This time we're getting solid evidence." The seconds stretched into an eternity. Then one of the junior programmers shouted, "Got it. Attacker's IP is located. It's coming from a hotel downtown. The Riverside Plaza. Call the police," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I immediately dialed 911, reporting a case of corporate espionage and attempted data theft. 3 hours later, the police raided the hotel room. They caught a man known as Brother Kong and Sophia Vance in the act. Their laptops connected to our servers, the stolen algorithm data flashing on the screens. The police report later confirmed they had hired a professional hacking team, financed by Sophia using the last of her family's dwindled funds, to steal our core technology and sell it to an overseas conglomerate. That night, long after the news had broken, Arthur staggered drunkenly into our office lobby. His suit was rumpled and stained, the stench of cheap whiskey clinging to him like a shroud. His eyes were bloodshot, his face a mask of utter despair. "You," he slurred, pointing a trembling finger at me. You knew about Sophia and that thug." I ignored him, continuing to pack my things. He stumbled closer, almost tripping over a chair. So you've won," he suddenly shouted, his voice breaking with hysteria. "Are you happy now? I'm the biggest joke in this entire city. The wedding invitations were already sent out. And the bride gets arrested in a hotel room with another man. For commercial espionage." "Arthur," I said calmly, finally looking at him. "I didn't win. I never considered you my opponent." The words hit him like a physical blow, making him stagger back a step. "Sophia?" he mumbled, his mind struggling to catch up. She acted on her own. I didn't know. I didn't benefit from it. Doesn't that mean you can forgive me?" "Arthur," I cut him off, my patience gone. "Sophia broke the law, but she did it for you, for your failing company. But what about you?" I took a step toward him, my gaze unwavering. "First, you suspected she was cheating on you and came crying to me. Now you're throwing her under the bus, calling her a criminal. You've never once reflected on your own mistakes. Are you even a man? Arthur Blackwood, the man who had once been so arrogant and proud, suddenly dropped to his knees. The sound of his knees hitting the hard floor was a dull, final thud. Elara, I was wrong, he sobbed, his shoulders shaking. I really know I was wrong. A wave of pity washed over me, so pathetic it was almost sympathy. In my past life I had loved this man for 50 years. And now he was kneeling in front of me, putting on a clumsy, drunken performance of remorse. Get up, Arthur, I said tiredly. Don't make yourself more pathetic than you already are. He lifted his head, a flicker of desperate hope in his red-rimmed eyes. You forgive me? Impossible, I said, the word flat and absolute. It shattered him completely. Arthur collapsed onto the floor, curling into a fetal position, wailing like a heartbroken child. I've lost everything, he cried, his voice muffled by the carpet. Sophia's a criminal. The company's going bankrupt. My dad's dying in the hospital. Leo, who had been standing silently by the door, wisely observing, walked over and silently handed him a box of tissues. Then he gently took my arm and guided me out of the office, closing the door softly behind us, leaving Arthur to his well-deserved breakdown. Once we were outside in the hallway, Leo pulled me into a quiet hug. Elara, he said once Arthur's sobs had subsided into muffled sniffles. Do you know why I don't pity him? I shook my head, burying my face in his shoulder, breathing in his clean, familiar scent of coffee and code. Because all of this, he said softly, is the result of his own choices. From inside the office, we heard Arthur's muffled voice. I didn't know it would turn out like this. Yes, you did, I said, pulling away and looking through the glass panel in the door at his crumpled form. I wasn't shouting. I was just stating a fact. Because I know you too well, Arthur Blackwood. You've always been a selfish man. He opened his mouth but no sound came out. Now please leave. I pressed the button for building security. Arthur swayed to his feet, looking ancient. Before the guards arrived, he suddenly turned, his eyes meeting mine one last time. If I hadn't chosen Sophia back then, he whispered, the question hanging in the air, charged with a lifetime of regret. Would we have been happy? The cruelty of that question lay in the fact that I already knew the answer. I had spent 50 years in my past life proving it. Even if he hadn't chosen Sophia, we wouldn't have been happy. Because deep down he was and always would be selfish to the core. No, I told him honestly, my voice devoid of malice. Because you'll always only love yourself. Security arrived and escorted a broken, weeping Arthur away. Leo returned to the office and quietly handed me a cup of hot tea. Are you okay? He asked softly. I shook my head, suddenly feeling more exhausted than I ever had in both my lives. I want to go home. He nodded. I'll take you. In his car, parked in the quiet of my apartment's underground garage, I finally let the tears fall. They weren't for Arthur. They were for the version of myself in my previous life. The foolish Elara Vance who had loved for a lifetime without ever being truly, selflessly loved in return. Leo didn't say a word. He just handed me a packet of tissues, turned up the heat and waited, a silent, steady presence in the dark. When my tears were spent, he simply said, "Whenever you're ready." The car rolled out of the garage and into the ink-black night, leaving the ghosts of the past buried deep behind us. A new life was waiting. The silence in the car was heavy, but it was a comfortable weight. Leo didn't press me to talk, his focus entirely on the road, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of my emotions. The tears I had shed weren't of sadness but of release. It was the final funeral for my past life, for the woman I had been, for the love I had wasted. As we pulled up to my apartment building, the sky was beginning to lighten from black to a deep, bruised blue. "Thank you, Leo," I said, my voice hoarse. "For everything." He turned to me, his face illuminated by the dashboard lights. "You never have to thank me for that, Elara." He reached out, his hand hesitating for a second before gently brushing a stray tear from my cheek. The touch was electric, a simple gesture that held more tenderness than Arthur had shown me in 50 years. "Get some rest. I'll handle the press and the investors today." I nodded, unable to form any more words. As I watched his car disappear around the corner, I felt a profound sense of peace. The chapter of Arthur Blackwood was closed, its final page stained with tears and regret. But it was finally, irrevocably, over. The news of Sophia's arrest and its connection to the Blackwood Group's collapse was the scandal of the season. The business press had a field day. Blackwood heir's fiancé arrested in corporate espionage plot. Arthur Tech victim and victor. The narrative was set in stone. We were the brilliant, wronged innovators. They were the corrupt, desperate dinosaurs. A week after the arrest, I was in my new office. A proper, sunlit space in the tech incubator we'd moved into, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Leo. Are you free tonight? My parents are in town. They want to invite you to dinner. My heart did a little flip-flop. This felt different, more significant than any investor meeting. I couldn't help the smile that spread across my face. Of course I'm free, I typed back. Do I need to dress formally? His reply was almost immediate. No, just a casual family meal. My mom heard you like sea bass, so she learned to make it the way it's done in your hometown. A warmth swelled in my chest, so intense it was almost painful. So, this is what it felt like to be cherished, to be thought of in such a simple, profound way. In all my years with Arthur, his family had never once asked about my preferences. I was just the girl he had settled for. That evening Leo picked me up. The dinner was at a cozy, family-owned Italian restaurant his parents loved. Jonathan and Maria Thorne were nothing like the stuffy, status-obsessed people I was used to. Jonathan, a retired history professor, had a quiet, thoughtful intelligence, and Maria, a landscape artist, was warm and effusive. They didn't grill me about my family's wealth or my career prospects. Instead, they asked about my studies, my thoughts on the future of technology, and told hilarious, embarrassing stories about a young Leo trying to build a robot that would fetch him snacks. I watched Leo throughout the evening, seeing the easy affection he had with his parents, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. This was the real man, far removed from the tech prodigy the world was beginning to see. He was kind, grounded, and deeply good. After dinner, Leo drove me home and parked beneath my apartment building, but he didn't rush to say goodbye. The comfortable silence from the night in the garage returned, but this time it was filled with a different kind of tension, sweet and anticipatory. Ilara. Leo Miller hesitated, his fingers tapping a nervous rhythm on the steering wheel. My parents, they really like you. I like them too, I said with a genuine smile. Your mom's sea bass was incredible. He drew in a deep breath as if steeling himself for a plunge, then suddenly turned to me. The interior light was off, but his eyes shone with an almost startling brightness in the dark. Then, do you like me? Seeing how uncharacteristically nervous he looked, the brilliant coder who could face down hacker attacks without flinching, I suddenly felt the urge to tease him. As a business partner, I said deliberately, watching his shoulders slump in defeat, of course I like you. His face fell. Oh. And, I continued, leaning closer, closing the distance between us in the intimate confines of the car. As a boyfriend candidate, the reviews are also very positive. He jerked his head up so quickly his glasses almost slipped off his nose. Really? He breathed, his voice full of hope and disbelief. Really? I nodded, my smile softening into something more real, more vulnerable. Yes, Leo Thorne. Let's be together. The next second I was pulled into a warm, secure embrace. He held me tightly as if I were something precious, and I could feel the frantic, joyful pounding of his heart against my ear. I promise I'll treat you well, he whispered, his voice low and certain, resonating through his chest and into mine. Better than anyone else ever could. As I rested my head on his shoulder, the last of the haze from my past sorrows seemed to drift away like smoke. The ghosts were finally silent. A brand new life, bright and full of promise, had truly only just begun. The months that followed were the happiest and most productive of my life in either lifetime. With the Blackwood scandal receding into the past and a clear runway ahead, Ether Tech soared. The investment from Mr. Chin, combined with the publicity from the failed hacking attempt, made us the darlings of the tech world. We grew from a team of 5 crammed into a lab to 20 employees in a sleek, modern office. Working with Leo was a revelation. Where Arthur had taken credit for my ideas, Leo amplified them. He was the technical visionary, the architect of our AI's brain. I was the strategist, the one who could see the path to market, who understood the complexities of healthcare systems and regulatory hurdles. We were a perfect symbiosis. Our disagreements were passionate but respectful, always ending with a better solution than either of us could have conceived alone. And outside the office we were learning each other. Our dates were a mix of nerdy excitement, like testing early prototypes in a simulated clinical environment, and simple, quiet moments. We'd spend Sunday afternoons in his apartment, him coding while I read market analyses, a comfortable silence between us that felt more intimate than any conversation. One evening we were working late, finalizing a major partnership with a regional hospital network. I was reviewing the contract for the 10th time when I felt his eyes on me. I looked up from my laptop. "What?" I asked, smiling. "Nothing," he said, shaking his head with a look of quiet wonder. I can't believe my luck. I get to build my dream with the most brilliant, beautiful woman I've ever met." My heart swelled. This was what a real partnership felt like. It wasn't about power or control. It was about mutual admiration and shared dreams. The success of EtherTech was a stark contrast to the complete dissolution of the Blackwood Empire. Their company was officially liquidated, its assets sold off to pay its massive debts. Arthur's father passed away shortly after, the stress and shame said to have been the final blow. Arthur himself vanished from the city's social scene. Rumor had it he had moved to a small nowhere town, living off the last remnants of a trust fund that was shielded from creditors. The mighty had fallen, and I felt nothing but a distant, quiet pity. He was a stranger to me now. On the 1-year anniversary of my rebirth, Leo and I were celebrating a major milestone. Our AI system had officially received its first round of clinical approvals. We were at a quiet, upscale restaurant, toasting with a glass of champagne. "A year ago," I said, clicking my glass against his, "I was a different person. I thought my life was on a fixed, miserable track. I can't believe how much has changed." "It's because you had the courage to change it," he said, his gaze intense. "You walked away from what was safe and expected, and you built something extraordinary." Later, as we shared a decadent chocolate dessert, he grew quiet again, a nervous energy returning to him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My breath hitched. "Elara," he began, his voice slightly unsteady. "Building this company with you has been the greatest professional achievement of my life. But building a life with you, that's the greatest joy I've ever known. You are my partner in every sense of the word. My best friend, my greatest ally, the love of my life." He opened the box. Nestled inside was a beautiful, elegant ring, a single, perfect emerald-cut diamond set on a simple platinum band. It was understated, sophisticated, and utterly perfect for me. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his eyes full of so much love and hope it almost brought me to tears. In my past life, Arthur's proposal had been a calculated affair, more a business merger than a romantic gesture. This was everything. "Yes," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Leo. 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, and it fit as if it had been made for me. Perhaps it had. As we kissed, surrounded by the soft murmur of the restaurant, I knew with a certainty that spanned 2 lifetimes that this was my destiny. Not a life of quiet desperation, but one of passionate creation and profound, reciprocated love. The future was no longer something to be endured. It was a blank canvas, and we would paint it together. The engagement period was a whirlwind of joy. My parents, who had watched me transform from a heartbroken girl into a confident CO, were overjoyed. They adored Leo, seeing in him the kind of man they had always hoped for me. Someone who saw my strength not as a threat but as a virtue. We were deep in wedding planning, a happy chaos of cake tastings and venue visits, when a letter arrived at my office. It was addressed to me in a shaky, unfamiliar handwriting. The postmark was from a small town hundreds of miles away. Curious, I opened it. The letter was short, written on a plain sheet of paper. "Lara, I know I have no right to write to you. I heard about your engagement. I saw the announcement in the business section. I am living a simple life now. It's a humbler existence than I ever imagined, but it's honest. I work as a clerk in a local library. It gives me time to think. And I have done nothing but think for these past months. I was a fool. I was arrogant, selfish, and blind. I threw away something precious for a glittering illusion. I see that now with a clarity that is almost painful. What I had with Sophia was a fantasy, a rebellion. What I had with you was real, and I was too much of a coward to appreciate it. I don't expect a reply. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I am truly, deeply sorry for the pain I caused you. You deserved so much better than I ever was. I wish you and Leo a lifetime of happiness. You have built something incredible, and he seems like a good man. You deserve that, Arthur. I held the letter, the paper feeling fragile in my hands. There was no anger left, no bitterness. Just a faint, melancholic pity. He was right. He didn't deserve my forgiveness, but the letter felt like a genuine final attempt at closure from a broken man. It was the ghost of my past life finally laying itself to rest. I didn't show the letter to Leo. There was no need. That chapter was closed. I folded it neatly, placed it back in the envelope and tucked it away in the back of a drawer. It was an artifact, a reminder of a road not taken, a life not lived. The rest of the wedding preparations continued with renewed joy. We decided on a small, intimate ceremony in a botanical garden, surrounded by our closest family and friends and the entire EtherTech team. There were no ghosts at the wedding, only the bright, shining promise of the future. The wedding day was perfect. As I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, seeing Leo waiting for me under a canopy of blooming wisteria, his eyes filled with tears of joy, I knew I had made the right choice in every possible way. Our vows were personal, speaking of partnership, shared dreams, and a love that felt both brand new and eternally familiar. The years that followed were a testament to that partnership. EtherTech didn't just succeed. It revolutionized early-stage cancer detection. We saved lives. We built a company known for its ethics as much as its innovation. We had 2 children, a boy and a girl, and we raised them in a home filled with laughter, respect, and the unwavering knowledge that they were loved. I never forgot my first life. It was a part of me, a shadow that gave depth to my happiness. But it no longer had any power over me. I had lived 2 lifetimes. One for a man who saw me as second best and one for a man who saw me as his equal, his other half. On our 50th wedding anniversary, our children and grandchildren threw us a huge party. Leo, his hair now silver but his eyes still bright behind his glasses, stood to make a toast. 50 years ago, he said, his voice strong and clear, holding my gaze, I married the woman who showed me that the most complex code in the world is simple compared to the human heart. You have been my co-founder, my navigator, my best friend, and the great love of my life. Every day with you has been a gift. As everyone cheered, he leaned in and kissed me. And in that kiss, I felt the entire beautiful arc of our life together. The struggles, the triumphs, the quiet mornings, and the loud celebrations. I had been given a second chance and I had lived it fully without reservation. I had loved and been loved. I had built a legacy. And as I looked around at my family, my friends, and the man who had stood by me for half a century, I knew that this was the life I was always meant to live. The autumn of my first life had been a prelude to decay, but the autumn of this life was golden, rich, and deeply, profoundly satisfying. The end.